The US and Israel tighten military precautions amid Iran tensions. The Arab League condemns Iranian attacks on Arab countries. And Cairo hosts conference on occupied Jerusalem and the Palestinian cause. Hello, good evening, live from Cairo. This is Q News. I'm Mark Summers. Let's get to our top story tonight. Iran says the human and infrastructure costs of the conflict continue to grow following weeks of US attacks. Iran's health ministry has said 50 people have been killed and 500 others injured in US attacks over the past 3 weeks. Meanwhile, authorities in Hormuzgan province said 116 telecommunications towers were knocked out after US strikes targeted internet infrastructure yesterday. Officials said the damage has disrupted communications in parts of southeastern Iran. The US military is rejecting Iran's claims that its recent strikes targeted civilian infrastructure. The US military denied Iranian reports that its operations targeted civilian infrastructure and sailors. It said these strikes were aimed at facilities used by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to launch attacks against maritime shipping. Earlier, US Central Command said it had carried out a 7th wave of strikes targeting Iranian military logistics infrastructure, underground weapons depots, and naval capabilities. CENTCOM said the military pressure and the naval blockade on Iran remain in place. The United States and Israel are taking additional military and security precautions as tensions with Iran remain high. The Israeli military has said US aerial refueling aircraft are expected to arrive at Israeli Air Force bases rather than Ben Gurion Airport. Israeli officials said the move is intended to increase the number of US refueling aircraft deployed in Israel. Meanwhile, the US Embassy in Tel Aviv has issued a travel warning for Israel and the wider region, citing heightened tensions across the Middle East. Iran says it has launched a fresh wave of retaliatory strikes against US targets across the region. The IRGC claimed it destroyed a US naval fuel support pier at Kuwait's Al Ahmadi port, along with a drone weapons depot, an intelligence data center, and a US communications facility in Bahrain. Iran said the attacks were carried out in retaliation for US strikes overnight. The conflict is now spilling deeper into Kuwait, with Iranian attacks causing damage to key infrastructure across the country. Kuwait's military says it intercepted Iranian ballistic missiles and drones after multiple attacks targeted military, civilian, and other critical facilities across the country. Authorities said debris from intercepted projectiles landed in residential areas. The oil ministry reported injuries and extensive damage at vital oil sector facilities, while the Kuwait Fire Force said crews were tackling fires at 2 separate locations and that several firefighters and a worker were injured during the response. Meanwhile, Kuwait's foreign ministry condemned attacks on a power generation and water desalination facility, accusing Iran of deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure and other essential services. And Jordan says its air defenses have intercepted a new wave of Iranian missiles and drones, as Tehran claims it targeted a military airbase in the kingdom. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said it targeted Jordan's Azraq airbase, and the Jordanian military said its air defenses intercepted 4 drones that entered the kingdom's airspace, along with 10 missiles launched from Iran. It reported no casualties or material damage. The United Arab Emirates has condemned renewed Iranian attacks on Bahrain, Kuwait and Jordan. The UAE's foreign ministry strongly condemned what it described as renewed Iranian attacks targeting Bahrain, Kuwait and Jordan. It said the attacks constitute a flagrant violation of the 3 countries' sovereignty and pose a serious threat to regional security and stability. The ministry reaffirmed the UAE's solidarity with these 3 countries and its support for all measures aimed at protecting their security and stability. The Arab League has condemned the latest Iranian attacks on several Arab countries, warning they threaten regional security and stability. The Arab League Secretary General condemned what he described as Iranian attacks on several Arab states, particularly in the Gulf, and reaffirmed the organization's full solidarity with the countries affected. He said the attacks represent an attempt to widen the conflict and push the region towards greater instability. The Secretary General also accused Iran of pursuing an aggressive approach that violates the sovereignty of Arab states, international law, and the principles of good neighborliness. He called on Tehran to immediately halt the attacks, de-escalate tensions, and return to negotiations. Regional condemnation of Iran's latest attacks continues to grow. Egypt condemned the Iranian attacks targeting Kuwait, Bahrain, and Oman. The Foreign Ministry denounced strikes on civilian facilities and critical infrastructure, describing them as a blatant violation of the 3 countries' sovereignty and a dangerous escalation threatening security across the Gulf. Cairo also reaffirmed its full solidarity with the 3 countries and pledged support against any threat to their security, stability, and territorial integrity. And for more on today's developments and what they could mean for the region, let's head over to our newsroom where Mona Masali is standing by for us. Mona.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. And to help us make sense of these rapidly unfolding developments, we're now joined from Cairo by writer and journalist, Mr. Mohammed Ali Hassan. And Mr. Hassan, we thank you so much for being with us. And how would you assess the current state of tensions that has been involving Iran?
After greetings to you, we are currently facing a more sophisticated and complicated situation, prominently because the United States of America and Iran are escalating, and they have been escalating now for several days. The 7th wave of strikes has ended hours ago with the Central U.S. intelligence that was U.S. base targeting goals in Iran, including infrastructures and Revolutionary Guard locations through which the Iranian forces are targeting vessels trying to go through the Strait of Hormuz. For Iran, they are now adopting a negative strategy, which is targeting the Gulf countries, especially Qatar and Saudi Arabia, also the United Arab Emirates and Iraq and Jordan. In this context, we can see that any sort of empathy from Iran towards any state is starting to be diluted, and for the Gulf state in their statements issued by their foreign ministries, especially from Bahrain and Kuwait, and especially in Kuwait, which is targeting civilian buildings, an electricity grid, and also a water desalination grid. And this is completely contradicting with what has been stated by the Iranian president or the foreign minister, and also contradicting with the statements issued by the Revolutionary Guard leaders, that what is being targeted in the Gulf is only the U.S. bases and U.S. affiliated locations.
Now, yes, if I may ask you here, now there have been for some time some contradicting remarks made by the U.S. president and from Tehran. For an instant, despite the U.S. President Trump's remarks that a deal remains possible, Tehran has insisted, as usual, that there are no plans for negotiations. Now, how do you read those conflicting messages?
The U.S. President Donald Trump is using the card of negotiations, and he's practicing pressures. And this is the approach that has been adopted by the U.S. president all along. Right now, we are seeing some sort of war between the two parties, and no one knows when it's going to end. And also, Iran, the deputy foreign minister has stated earlier that the United States was not completely compliant to the 14 items on the memorandum of understanding, since it has been signed between Tehran and Washington. Tehran also is saying that Tehran also has not been completely committed to the items pertaining to the Strait of Hormuz, as they have placed mines in the Arab Gulf and targeting the vessels coming from this direction. And we have seen conflicting remarks from the United States and from Iran, and this has been going on since the 28th of February, since the beginning of this war. The U.S. President Donald Trump has been always releasing these contradicting remarks, and now we are seeing this particularly in the CENTCOM base being completely responsible for collecting fees from the vessels going through the Strait of Hormuz, and this has been negated also by the same president, and he said that Iran cannot do the same. He retracted the statement after a few hours from receiving them. Also, the Sultanate of Oman led an initiative to manage the strait after an agreement with Iran, and the Iranian media said they will be welcoming to this initiative. A few hours later, the Revolutionary Guard struck the Sultanate of Oman with certain locations there. So what is happening now from the Iranian side, the remarks being released from the Revolutionary Guard, and also at the level of the Iranian Foreign Ministry, is completely contradicting inside Iran. Same goes for the United States. Many remarks released by President Trump and even U.S. senior officials, they are releasing various contradicting and conflicting statements, and this has been the way since Trump took office for his second term, or when it comes to the Republican Party stance towards this war and even the U.S. administration.
So, from your point of view, what would be Iran's main priorities at this stage, and how far are they contradicting to the priorities of the U.S.?
At the moment, Iran and the United States are have this kind of imbalance in their statements and even in their bank of goals, and they have different priorities every couple of days. At first, the United States has priorities represented in changing the Iranian regime and getting a new regime in place in Iran, and also putting an end to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and ending the nuclear program, and then reaching the Strait of Hormuz that is now a point of conflict between Washington and Tehran. For Tehran, the priority today and the only pressuring card they have away from the Strait of Hormuz is the security of the Gulf states. Iran is targeting the Gulf states systematically and not in a random way at all. They are targeting infrastructure and very vital and influential points and locations in the Gulf states, and all the remarks that has been released so far from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Iran and the Revolutionary Guard has been conflicting. Also, when it comes to targeting the vessels going through the Strait of Hormuz is a violation of the Memorandum of Understanding signed with the United States. So the conflict with the United States regarding these priorities, I think this will be met by ending the Memorandum of Understanding, and this is what we have seen as the civilians now are being harmed in the Arab Gulf, and also the infrastructures are being targeted. At a global level, Iran is playing the chord of targeting vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz and imposing this kind of siege on the strait, disrupting the traffic and the navigation in this very vital waterway. At the moment, the casualties are increasing for all parties, but especially in this international waterway, as the global interests and the global economy are highly impacted, as the oil prices are going up by the moment, and the gold prices as well. We have seen the disruptions and the disruption of the global value chains. It is all a result of who has the control over the Strait of Hormuz and who has the control over the navigation traffic there.
Right, from Cairo, that was Mr. Muhammad Ali Hassan, a writer and journalist. Thank you so much for your insights and for your valuable time, and for joining us here on Q News. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we will continue to follow these developments closely as they unfold further. Mark, back to you.
Thank you very much, Mana. Thank you very much indeed. Now, the fallout from the regional conflict is also shaping developments in Lebanon, where diplomatic and security efforts are gathering pace.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين. وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
So, attention is also focused on southern Lebanon, where questions remain over the implementation of a proposed trial arrangement. A Lebanese military source has said that Israeli forces have not withdrawn from any position in the south or left any of the designated trial areas. The source said implementing the framework agreement would require an Israeli withdrawal from occupied towns where troops remain deployed on the ground. He added that the Lebanese army has intensified patrols and is ready to deploy immediately to any area vacated by Israeli forces, extending its presence to the last point along the southern border. Israeli media are reporting new details on a proposed withdrawal from parts of southern Lebanon. Israeli media reported that Israeli forces have withdrawn from one of the designated trial areas in southern Lebanon. The Israeli Public Broadcasting Corporation said the military will withdraw only from the towns of the eastern and western Zautar under understandings reached with Lebanon. It added that Israel has asked the United States to verify that the trial areas are free of Hezbollah military infrastructure. Lebanese media say President Joseph Aoun is preparing for high-level talks in Washington. Lebanese sources said President Joseph Aoun will travel to Washington for talks with President Trump and other senior officials. And according to the sources, the discussions will prioritize the situation in southern Lebanon and efforts to end the war. They added that Aoun will reaffirm Lebanon's commitment to the framework agreement with Israel and its plan to move forward with placing all weapons under state control. Now, in other news, Cairo has hosted an international conference focusing on the future of Jerusalem and the Palestinian cause. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the UN Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People held the international conference on Jerusalem in Cairo. Palestinian officials describe the meeting as taking place at a critical moment, reaffirming East Jerusalem as the capital of a future Palestinian state and calling for greater international protection for the city's residents and holy sites. Participants also condemned Israeli settlement expansion, home demolitions, and forced displacement in occupied Jerusalem, while renewing support for the two-state solution and UNRWA. Now, China is showcasing its latest advances in humanoid robotics at a major artificial intelligence conference in Shanghai. Humanoid robot companies from across China are displaying their latest technologies at the World Artificial Intelligence Conference in Shanghai. The exhibition highlights Beijing's push to strengthen its position in advanced technologies, particularly robotics. China has increasingly used such events to showcase its technological progress as it seeks to expand its global leadership in artificial intelligence. And it can pick up a box. Now, as Europe endures another summer heat wave, tourists in Croatia are cooling off at a unique underwater museum. Visitors explored Croatia's underwater museum near the coastal city of Trogir, where sculptures are displayed beneath the Adriatic Sea. The attraction features the world's only underwater way of the cross, with 52 life-size statues, including a 7-meter-tall statue of Jesus Christ. The museum's shallow depths allow beginners and snorkelers to experience the site without scuba diving equipment. And a Tyrannosaurus rex fossil has set a new auction record after selling for more than $50 million in New York. The nearly 38-foot T-Rex skeleton, named Gus, sold for $50.1 million at Sotheby's, far exceeding its pre-sale estimate. The fossil, dating back around 67 million years, is one of the largest and most complete Tyrannosaurus rex specimens ever discovered. The sale broke the previous auction record for a dinosaur fossil set by the Stegosaurus skeleton apex last year. And now, before we go, let's recap the main headlines this evening. The US and Israel tighten military precautions amid Iran tensions. The Arab League condemns Iranian attacks on Arab countries. And Cairo hosts conference on occupied Jerusalem and the Palestinian cause. And that's our main news for now, but stay with us as we'll be keeping an eye on developments as they continue to unfold throughout the evening, and we'll have discussion and debate too. In Depth is on the way with Mona in just a few moments. Stay with us here on Q News.